Sports professor Rick Horrow with Beyond the Scoreboard. Inside all aspects of the trillion-dollar sports business. NHL All-Star Game over. NFL Pro Bowl over. NBA All-Star Game getting ready. NASCAR season starting. We'll cover all of those things later, but all Super Bowl, all the time, appointment viewing, hundreds of millions of viewers, $5 million a 30-second spot, a 87% increase since 2008. First ads, $30,000 for a 30-second spot. Way back when I was just a kid, believe it or not, in the late 60s, dating myself, but Super Bowl has taken on titanic proportions. It is bigger than any event in America, quite clearly, and maybe one of the biggest events around the world. Getting there this year, pretty easy if you know where you're going. Minneapolis from Philadelphia cost about $1,500, the lowest price. That means you got to spend a lot of money. The average prices for tickets were at $5,400 when the Vikings went up 7-0 and then went down to $4,000 when everybody knew the Vikings would not be in it. But Philadelphia fans sure can travel. $4,900 is the average cost of a ticket for the past 5 Super Bowls, and it's holding firm. Obviously, this whole week talks about economic impact in the Twin Cities, and the interesting thing about it is, while the Vikings didn't do the fans any favors, their loss meant more economic positives for the city of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. You have more people coming in from out of state. Obviously, if the Vikings had won, everybody would joust for high ticket prices, but people would be coming in their cars, not in planes and not staying in hotels and eating in restaurants. Economic impact should be over $300 to $500 million for a Super Bowl that it may be once in a stadium life for this stadium, as good as it is. Remember, the Hubert Humphrey Metrodome had one when it was open, just like the Silver Dome in Detroit, Ford Field, and on and on and on. But the bottom line is, certainly whether you call it a payback to a city that has made a major investment, or even more important, the opportunity to generate substantial economic impact, it's the same thing. It is really, really significant for the world. Kevin Warren is the president of the Minnesota Vikings. He took us on a tour of U.S. Bank Stadium. We'll get to that in a few minutes, then go through the segue of the other sports. But first, if you want to take a look at our 15 to watch and 55 tech and 5 philanthropic items, look at NBCWashington.com, CSN Washington, as well as subscribe, Audio Boom, join us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and all of the normal places you can get us. But let's talk Super Bowl first before we talk about Kevin Warren. Talking about tickets, it's easy to do if you're not going to get a ticket to the game. The NBC tech machine certainly has continued to increase. The extensive game coverage begins at noon, a pregame stream, continuing with the game, halftime show, postgame, and then a This Is Us episode after the game. The game is available to stream via the NFL and Yahoo Sports apps. Back in 2012, you may remember, NBC became the first network to live stream the Super Bowl when the Giants beat the Patriots 21-17 at Lucas Oil Stadium. And so the biggest day on television, one of the most streamed days of the year, says Rick Cordella, who runs that department for NBC. An expected number of streams for Super Bowl 52 to break records, as this means consumption now increases exponentially each year. What about people buying stuff? Well, according to NFL.com, injured Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz came out on top this year on jersey sales. Patriots quarterback Tom Brady finished second. Interesting. Wentz had an MVP caliber season until he tore his ACL and other parts of his body, diving into the end zone late in the season. He's still ranked number 1 overall in merchandise sales. Number 2, Brady. Number 3, Dak Prescott. Number 4, Antonio Brown. Number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Cowboys had the best-selling jersey, followed by the Patriots, followed by the Steelers. And the Cowboys, boy, they made a great playoff. Oh, no, they didn't make the playoffs. Well, the jersey sales numbers speak strongly to the NFL's ability to furnish a huge platform for individual player brands, even if they're sidelined. Really important issue to remember as it relates to all of that. Super Bowl philanthropy, sports philanthropy, really critical. And for example, United Way Worldwide, Greater Twin Cities United Way, NFL, is teaming up at the Super Bowl Experience part of Super Bowl 52's 7-day takeover at the Minneapolis Convention Center. The program is in conjunction with EverFi, the education technology company, and the interactive booth highlights the United Way's year-round digital education program called NFL Character Playbook. They talk about a program called a virtual reality game, It's in Your Hands, giving participants of all ages the chance to put their character to the test in a 360-degree virtual reality football field. One scenario at a time, individuals answer questions and make decisions by throwing footballs at various target answers. Stars like Adam Thielen, Case Keenum, Everson Griffin, Kyle Rudolph of the Vikings will be there. Virtual photos with players and giveaways. In the Character Playbook booth, a great example of a purpose-driven experiential. At the NFL Experience and elsewhere, fans can walk away with valuable life lessons, but let's also remember that the Super Bowl is all about kids, philanthropy, and learning. That's really important. But it's also about tech. Mercedes-Benz giving away a sports car to the person who has his or her finger continuously placed on a smartphone screen for the longest while following around the virtual car during the Super Bowl. Who thought this one up? The Patriots and the Eagles battle it out. The last fan standing challenges fans to avoid the distractions of Super Bowl Sunday and test their patience, stamina, and digital dexterity. So the last fan standing is a process where, according to the rules, the contestant would be disqualified if at any time he or she uses another person's finger to keep in touch with the device. So, bottom line of all of this is a really interesting process that brings people to say, why are we doing it? The more they say that, obviously, the more they're interested in it, and kudos to Mercedes-Benz, and they obviously have a major stake in the NFL with Mercedes-Benz Stadium on the Super Bowl rotation next year, as well as, obviously, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. And this is another good idea of activation. How about a couple of fun things that it's cold, going to be even colder. But according to our friends at Wallet Hub, the average ticket price, again, about $5,000, but 1.35 billion chicken wings will be eaten during the Super Bowl. That's unreal. Plus at least 14,500 tons of chips, 8 million pounds of guacamole, and 10 million pounds of ribs. How about this survey? 1 in 5 people would skip their wedding of a close friend or relative to watch their team in the Super Bowl live, and more than 1 in 7 would skip the birth of their child. My only comment, who's the one? And when you think about this, Super Bowl brings tons of benefits to the host city, but some pretty huge burdens. About 1 million people flocked to the Twin Cities this year. A lot of crowd, a lot of traffic, a lot of garbage. The first two are tough to avoid, but there's a plan in place to help with the latter. This year, some of the game's corporate partners joining forces to host a Super Bowl Zero Waste Legacy Project. Minnesota Sports Facilities Association, NFL, PepsiCo, Aramark. They're teaming up for this to produce no waste during the Super Bowl. Obviously, fans throw stuff away, but 40 tons of trash typically generated during a Super Bowl out of a landfill. 90% of the garbage from the game, food waste and paper, composted or recycled, and the remaining 10% of waste likely be plastics that can't be reused. Those will go to waste-to-energy incinerators, where they'll be burned and converted to power. They're not without controversy. The emissions may affect our quality over time, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And you wouldn't have thought about it, but everything is big in Minneapolis. U.S. Bank Stadium, a collaborative effort, Ziggy Wilf and his family, as well as the Vikings, as well as the state, as well as the authority. They put it together, took a long time, but it's an incredible facility. Kevin Warren, who's the president of the Vikings, philanthropic efforts, key in Habitat for Humanity. We've had him as a guest on a number of shows, including the walkthrough of U.S. Bank Stadium. I think it's really important to understand what's at stake for a game like this through the eyes of Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer. General Counsel, not really, but he could be. Everything. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Good to be here. Nice, thank you.
Awesome. So I think what we ought to do is sit down and talk for a little while, and then we can end up on the field, if that's okay. If we can, this is all. Kevin, you remember in the old days we would have this very specific 27 seconds in and out in a very tightly run show. We're not doing that anymore, ladies and gentlemen. This is very informal. Hutch was great. So how often are you here? This building now?
Here at the stadium?
Yeah.
I would probably say one way or another every day.
Yeah. And will be through the season?
Oh, absolutely. You know, anytime you have a building of this magnitude, you know, it's one thing to see it from a construction standpoint, but then it's another thing to see it from an interactive standpoint. So, well, you can't walk it enough.
It's your baby.
That's right. But I mean, you just learn. It was interesting. I understood how to navigate this building with the stairwells, and when they put in the elevators and escalators, it changed the whole dynamics of how to get around. So, I'm trying to be here as much as we.
We just had a conversation with Hutch about the over-escalation to make sure the fans are comfortable. So. Should we go up here and okay. Live television, but it's no better. So Caroline, you want to stay down here and do or how do you want to do this? Good. Okay. So, did you ever think this was going to get done?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never started it if I didn't think it would.
And there were times, and we all understand the dynamics of facility development these days, and it's more than just. Increasing property taxes, spending $20 million, making it a public works project, having baseball, football in it, making it round and say, go play. It is much different. And this is for lack of a better term, after it was described here, to me, it's a generational icon.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think it's a phenomenal public-private partnership. It really shows that private big business, the government can come together to do special things for the community, for kids, and for the various constituents involved. And you're right. This is a complicated project because it needed to be designed in a manner that it would stand the test of time, not only from an operational standpoint, but also just from an integrity and community standpoint.
We all understand from a general perspective, politics is fleeting, and we all understand that everybody has an opinion on stadium development, arena development, from the color of the seats to where the location should be to who takes care of the overruns and anything in between. The Vikings hadn't performed very well in the field for a while, and there were also some behavioral issues, which in Minnesota don't work very well.
Right.
So you had a lot to overcome, basically, and you did.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it is, and it really is, all the credit has to go to ownership. I mean, they've been supportive from the day that they bought the team and closed on the deal back in 2005. They provided all of us the resources financially and support. It's one thing for some owners to provide financial resources, but to provide financial resources and the support and the encouragement and to accept our ideas on this. And that's what really became the economic energy behind this project. And so you're right. I think things are falling into place. This is a great project. It's good for us to come together. The community will use it, and we hope we win a lot of football games here and one day can bring a Lombardi trophy back here to this building.
Isn't it amazing how the enhancement of a brand makes people feel differently and better about the team on the field, and then on the field all of a sudden things happen differently that you didn't even expect. Right. It happens in a lot of different sports, and we've all seen that. The important thing I think people ought to also remember is that this is not just a football stadium. You've already had AC Milan as we take this. You're having Luke Bryan. You're going from Luke Bryan to Metallica, which certainly pushes the ends of music. But it's designed for baseball. You have a Final Four that's committed for 2019. You'll be in the Super Bowl February 4th, 2017, or you'll be around it. And you'll have the X Games. This is truly an entertainment facility, not just a sports venue.
Absolutely. I mean, you think that there will be some activity activity that will go on here on a daily basis, and all the way from weddings to bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and major concerts, major soccer games, high school football, baseball, our games, the X Games. Like you said, we have the Final Four for 2019, the Super Bowl in 2018. There are just a lot of excellent events, and I think what it shows is that this building was created in a way that it will cater to various groups, and people will be able to enjoy it at different levels, and so that's what we're excited about.
How important was the downtown urban development regeneration aspect from Target on one side to you guys on the other side?
I think very important. I mean, you think about it, there's been $1 billion that's been invested in this area, and it's changed the complexity of it. I mean, there was a great picture in the Star Tribune a couple months ago where it showed a picture of downtown of where it was before this project began. But if you look what's happened now with the park and the commons area, the condominium, the apartment development, just the energy in this area of town is outstanding. So I think being in an urban setting was critical to the success of this project. And Rick, what's interesting about this is really it was 31 months ago that we played our last football game here. That's just, that's astonishing to think we actually played a football game that short a period of time in the same location. Because if you look at the most recent stadiums, whether it's Indianapolis or Dallas or the New York Giants or San Francisco, they're built in a different location, which is much easier. So as I tell people all the time, I mean, we really had two stadium projects going on. One, getting ready to go play at the University of Minnesota, but to be able to tear the Metrodome down and then rebuild it here and have it ready to operate within 30 months is nothing short of a miracle.
We'll get back to that miracle in a minute, but it's actually 2.5 because you got a training facility that's just opened up as well. Tell us about TCO.
Yeah, so we're excited. I mean, we knew, just like you said, anytime you want to rebuild and reshape a brand, one of the areas that you can start in is one, building an outstanding stadium, but then also building a place that you practice, spend most of your days. You think about it here, the Vikings, I mean, we'll play at least 10 games here and hopefully a couple more playoff games a year here. We have an excellent young football team under the leadership of Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman. But in order to round that out, to really get us ready for the next 30, 40, 50 years, is that we needed to develop a practice facility. So we purchased 200 acres in Eagan, Minnesota, which is probably 12 miles from downtown. It's the former Delta Airlines, Northwest Airlines site. And so the topography of that land is beautiful. It's rich. It has lakes. So we broke ground on that last Tuesday. And then we also announced a 20-year naming rights partnership with Twin Cities Orthopedics, which will allow us to develop the best environment, best in class, a world-class environment for our players, staff, and coaches, because for the last 2 years, we've had our employees in 3 different locations, out at Winter Park, where we currently are, another building across the street, and then we had our other sales and marketing and ticket office people here across the street from the stadium. So to be able to get them under one roof will be outstanding.
And by the way, the beautiful facility with lakes and rolling hills, and he's very poetic in describing it, that's where Mike Zimmer is going to lock down these athletes and make them better, so they ain't going to see it. You're not, right. They may see some of it, but they're not going to see a lot of it.
One thing, but the interesting thing about that, the 40 acres is where our practice facility will be, but we have another 160 acres that we're going to develop where we'll have mixed-use housing, restaurants, hotels, a conference center, retreat centers, and we really want to bring in the community. We're going to have Friday night football games, high school football games. We're going to call it Skull Night, and also give young broadcast individuals an opportunity to film and be interactive in those games.
My sense also, without reading about it, is if Twin Cities Orthopedic is involved, there will be some notion of sports medicine advancement.
Absolutely.
And some tree, and you got acreage to be able to experiment on that too.
Right, so it's good. So we're excited. They were a perfect partner, and we're just excited to really develop it, and hopefully it'll be the kind of prototype for going forward in the National Football League.
Speaking of partnerships, everybody talks about public-private partnerships, and not too many people really understand what it means other than a vehicle to get more public money. Your case, not the case. You do have a pretty interesting mix. You got 350 or so from the state and 150 or so from the city. You take a substantial risk, you meaning the team and private, but the perspective of corporations between U.S. Bank and their published $220 million deal and TCO and some of your other partners, you're blessed with having a very vibrant and rich corporate community in Minnesota, but you've also taken advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have, I think it's 19 Fortune 500 companies here in the Twin Cities area, a lot of also just excellent non-public companies like a Cargill. But you're right. But as you know better than anyone, these companies don't put their name on brands that that aren't structured and handle their business accordingly. So it took a lot of time and energy these last couple of years to make sure that we actually had something to bring to the table, to build our brand, to build the stadium, to build our practice facility, and also to build a good football team, and then just develop an environment around the Minnesota Vikings that really, when people hear that name, it becomes synonymous with class and grace and style, and really building a best-in-class environment. So we've been fortunate to be able to do that.
That's a very important point from a business perspective for our audience. You can identify a corporate headquarter and say that's in the city, and then you assume it's going to be one meeting and you sign on the dotted line because the corporate CEO plays golf with the owner of the team, and that's it. This is rigorous. It is financial. It is legal. It is very complicated. And the U.S. Bank might have been an obvious first meeting, but that in no way meant it was going to get the deal done. Just like Lucas Oil in Indy or AT&T in Arlington and Dallas, these are very complicated transactions.
Every one of these relationships, first of all, starts with a relationship. You have to have a personal relationship, but they stand on their own, and so you need to develop a personal relationship, a business relationship, and it can't just be an environment where we go to a meeting and say, hey, this is how you all are going to benefit us. We need to make sure we spend the time to say that the door swings both ways, that this is how you think we can benefit the Minnesota Vikings, but vice versa, this is how we think we can be of benefit to their brand. And that's why it's really important that we keep our brand clean, build a great football team, build a great business, and also be great community partners and really help all of these wonderful companies. I'm just so excited to say we have all this business here in the Twin Cities, and most of the business that we do here is in the Twin Cities. And I think what it's doing is exposing people outside of the Twin Cities of how valuable this market is and how rich this market is.
Let's go way outside. Forbes came up with, and it's interesting because these numbers are always in some ways made up, but there's a good range. And Forbes, you're 18th in the NFL as far as value today. It'll no doubt rise after the stadium opens. But of all of the 50 international sports franchises, the Vikings are 39th on the list of their value, $1.6 billion. But it is interesting to know how international the Vikings brand has become and will become.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we talk about. I mean, it's interesting. We have one in particular, but we have a couple fans that fly in from the UK for our home games. And so I just think the nature of our brand and the uniqueness of the colors and also the design of the uniforms and because of the international roots it has, there are some people who have followed it. But and we were fortunate a couple of years ago to play in the UK against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I was really
how'd that game turn out?
It was outstanding. One, we won the football game. People stayed healthy, but I was really it just reiterated. I knew it was this way, but to be able to see the magnitude of Minnesota Vikings fans around the world was really refreshing. So,
are you a pioneer for Roger Goodell challenged his staff to deliver $25 billion annually by the end of this labor agreement, which is an interesting challenge. But so international revenue on the horizon. Are we close to looking at Real Madrid just got that $1.6 billion kit deal for 10 years?
Right.
Are we looking at international jerseys? Are we looking what kind of international revenue streams do we see?
I mean, I just think the opportunity for growth is amazing from an international standpoint. Whether it's actually from a tangible uniform related standpoint, or if it's more so from a media rights standpoint. But I think what's happened, and we constantly challenge our staff on a daily basis, that we really have to look, yes, we have to take care of our Minnesota market, and then we have to take care of the surrounding states, and then we look at our fans on a national basis, but also, this is a global game, and what are the creative ways that we can pull in fans that who may not have a chance to come here. I heard a stat recently that only 4% of the fans around the world that call themselves Vikings fans will ever come to this building. Because you think about it, if we're sold out, your season ticket holders, typically we have recurring business. But one of the things that we're focusing on here at the Vikings is the fan who lives in the UK or who lives in Paris or who lives in Sweden or Denmark.
I was going to say Scandinavian affinity would be an interesting thing to look at.
That they get the same feel that when they see our Vikings brand, that when they follow us on Vikings.com, that they get a same feel as the person who actually lives here in the Twin Cities that comes to every home game.
It is interesting that it used to be a lot of the teams wanted to be last in for all of these games across the pond, and now Jaguars, Rams, others want to be first in.
Right. I just think, and again, you look where we're going to play in Mexico City this year. I mean, there's an entire, potential opportunity, just the way the world is going, in China. I mean, there's just some unique opportunities. So it's exciting, as I said, to have owners like we do have who are on the forefront of looking to grow the game. And it's not only from a business standpoint, it's just from a goodness standpoint. This is an excellent game. It's football is a team building game. It's a character building game. I have a son who's going to be a senior in high school this year who's a football player. And I'm just excited that, he played as a kid and in high school, and it looks like he's going to have a chance to play at the college level. So, and I just look the way it's helped him to mature and the work ethic that associated with it. So I think it's the greatest game on the planet right now. We need to spread it.
Did you hear that, agents? His kid's going to be playing at the college level. Be very careful. Right. Be careful about that. So just a couple more on competitiveness. You were, I know people don't want to think about it, but you were a chip shot field goal away from the next round of the playoffs last year, and you're entering the first game of the world-class stadium on September 11th. How do you manage expectations?
I mean, I just think that's part of the growth process. There may be some people who don't want to talk about how close we were last year, but I think it's good to refresh and reflect upon that we were close. But as just like every business relationship, every season stands on itself. There's no guarantee that we'll win X number of games this year. I know one thing: Coach Zimmer is an excellent coach. He's tough. He's demanding. He keeps the player's mind in a positive space. Rick Spielman has brought in great talent. I'm excited about this season to see the young folks have an opportunity to grow, and I think we'll do extremely well. So there are other factors from injuries and all those things that go into play, but it's really exciting not only to see the organization excited, but to see this community. This community here is really excited about the Minnesota Vikings and about this new stadium.
And to see a guy who he grew up as a lawyer. He was a partner in a law firm. So inherently there is a limit on his enthusiasm. Not today. He's very excited.
Right.
Prediction?
No, I don't know. I tell people always. I'll tell you middle of February how well we.
Of course you will. As
right.
Everybody else will know. So take 3 minutes with me, if you don't mind, and walk through 360 Club, and then end us up on the field.
Sure,
if you
absolutely.
would. That's okay.
Right, thank you.
We got all our waivers signed in case you tumble.
Absolutely.
Are you okay? Are you indemnify me?
Yeah, we got you all covered.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, we take care of our guests.
All right. Thank you. Caroline, thank you again. You're doing an amazing job, especially those backward somersaults off the escalator. That was really good. It's as good as it gets. All right, where are we going?
So this is the Delta 360 Sky Club. I mean, one of the things that was interesting, HKS, who's the architect in this deal, we had an opportunity to tour really every stadium in the NFL. Yeah. And one good thing about our position, we get a chance not only to tour when we were getting ready to build it, but actually to go and watch the games. So one of the attributes that they had done, HKS had designed in AT&T Stadium, was they had this club that allowed the players to be able to exit, through that. And I kind of liken it to an EPL soccer. It's almost like the kids, walking out. So this is our locker room where players will be able to exit. So you can imagine, Delta Sky 360 Club, again, another great partner here, to having all these fans in here, enjoying themselves. And they had the nice Vikings flair here as far as the shields. But this is where actually our players will exit the locker room and enter the field on game day. So you can imagine what that would feel like from an energy level standpoint if you're a fan or a parent or a child or a business associate to be here pre-game. I mean, one of the things we wanted to do was create almost a collegiate environment. And if you've been to some of these stadiums that are really unique, whether it's Notre Dame or whether it's Georgia or some of these traditions where these players walk across campus on game day, it makes it special. So you can imagine being this close to the action to see players, and this is where they'll have an opportunity to enter on the field.
Candidly, how did the players feel about it? NASCAR drivers feel good because that's the way they grew up.
Yeah.
How did the players feel about they're not going to mingle, they're going to run through? But do they feel good about this?
Yeah, I think they will. know, and so they'll be kind of, able to walk through. I think one thing about it that we have to realize, some people may not want to talk about it, we're in the entertainment business. I mean, we're not a manufacturing company, so we don't sell anything. And I just say all the time to the staff, we're in the business of making memories. And so you can imagine from a business owner's perspective or a corporation's perspective, or like I said, a parent or a child, can you imagine the energy that will exist in this area right before, kickoff and the players are coming here and you're able to get 2 feet away from that standpoint? So that's what we want you to create so many memories in your mind that when you walk away, whether you come back, whether that's your only game for the year or your only game for the next couple of years, every time the Vikings come on TV or you come back here, you are harking back to it was a great day.
Unbelievable. Show me the field.
Yes.
Okay.
So the players will, exit here. And
the executives, does the COO come out first?
No, absolutely not. And it's wonderful. These are all the little subtle things when you build these stadiums that go into count, like these doors.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to make sure that the height of these doors, because we have some people that are, Alex Boone, who's 6'9", and you put on a helmet and cleats, and
right.
So and again, you look how this field opens up. I mean, so you come, out here, and look how light it is. That's a beautiful thing about amazing. The ETFE roof is that we always say clear is the new retractable. Yeah. And so you feel like you're really in an outdoor, stadium from this standpoint. And you look at the closeness of the seats, how visible are they're close. There is no bad seat, even from an upper deck. And one of the things that we spent a lot of time on the location of the scoreboards. And we had some discussion because HKS designed Dallas Stadium where we're going to have a center hung scoreboard. And by going to some games at Dallas, we thought that we would be better suited by putting it, in 2 of them in the end zone, so people would be able to see those from wherever we did. So
and also at the top level, I would assume most people are going to be looking down in the field as opposed to the scoreboard like they do in Dallas.
And so if you look at all the different clubs, whether it's Club Purple over there with the couches or, the various clubs, we have something for everyone. And you feel in this bowl right here, you don't feel like you're in a stadium that is just, so large or whatever the case may be. And the way it's structured, you can walk 360 degrees around the bowl. Some stadiums you go to, you have to go down to go up, or you can only go around. So, and we tried to have it very tasteful with our partners, U.S. Bank and Land O'Lakes and Verizon and Hy-Vee, that we wanted to make sure we had a nice, clean environment that was open, and I think people are going to be excited.
The interesting thing about your perspective on this, and it's a good way to kind of wrap up, is that a lot of critics who don't understand the business of the NFL disdain the implication of socialism, meaning with 70% of the revenue, either it's the 40% visiting and the ticket share and the television dollars, there's no incentive for innovation. You look at this, you look at Dallas, there is plenty of incentive for innovation.
Absolutely. I mean, because again, back to what I said earlier, we are making memories, and so we wanted to create an environment. This is not a normal football stadium. This has attributes of a Broadway playhouse. It has attributes, quite naturally, of a stadium. It has attributes with the art that we have. That is the art museum. So we want you to come in here that all of your senses are touched here, and that you watch a football game, you enjoy it. Look at these turf, suites here. It's been, an outstanding the way this building is, structured. So we're excited to invite the fans, really invite the world in here to see our stadium, and it's going to be exciting. There's a lot of hard work and sacrifice that have gone into building this.
And internationally, it's in the not too distant future. We started with this, that this becomes an icon. Dallas, Jerry Jones liked to say is the 8th or 9th wonder of the world because he says so. But he has something to back it up.
Right.
But there's no reason why this can't follow.
Absolutely, you can. And what makes it even special that it was done in what you call a middle market. I mean, there's a perception that in some of the larger markets you can do it, but to think that this was done from a public-private partnership here in the Twin Cities with excellent corporations, with the support, the way people bought bought the tickets and the suites, our sponsorships, and it's going to be an exciting place. I mean, these pivoting doors, you saw the deck out there. I mean, when this weather, I mean, this is going to be, the place to be, and so we're really excited and can't wait to get started. Again, I just want to give all the credit in the world to the Wilf family. Mark, Lenny, Ziggy, John Wilf have been incredible. And one other side note, Mr. Joseph Wilf passed last week, and we were all heartbroken. I mean, he was the kind of the leader of that family, and for the way that he worked and the way he started their beginning, not only for him but also Mrs. Wilf, to be able that this morphs into the second generation, be able to own this franchise and build this building is really special. So we also want to make him proud.
And to wrap up on that, it is a legacy. There are a lot of family ownership groups in the NFL who have economic challenges because the deals weren't structured right. They didn't have the stadium as a legacy. This is not that.
Right. No. This is a situation that really they're passionate and they're passionate about not only building a great football program, but a great business, and also giving back to the community here. This community has given us so much. We're thankful, and we wanted to build a world championship team, a best-in-class franchise, and do it the right way and create an environment. This is a way to really say thank you. And I think when you come in here and you see it, that there was no expense spared, and we wanted to create an environment that Wills were adamant about creating the best fan experience really in all of sports, not just in the NFL, but in all of sports.
So what's next for Kevin Warren?
Just keep going forward and get this Egan project built, and again, and have the same feeling about Egan that we have about this.
A successful entrepreneur, lawyer, but also stadium developer and visionary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time. Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Yeah,
hang on one sec. I just wanted to kind of summarize and conclude by, we spent an hour and we were going to spend 45 minutes, but this place in many ways is intoxicating. I've been in the facility development business for years, way back in the leather helmet days, and it was always a victory to get something done. This is not something. This is incredible. It is the history from the Vikings at the old Metropolitan Stadium, at that Mall of the Americas, now the Shopping Mall, and the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, as we said, not too far from here. But the Vikings have celebrated that 50-plus years in existence as the next step for the NFL. L.A., other stadiums, international development, $25 billion a year business. It is going to be, again, the economic juggernaut building on it, and the Vikings have had a very significant place in the economic, social, and emotional history of the NFL. Rick Horrow, keeping score. Thank you very much. Speak with you soon. Kevin Warren gives us an interesting perspective on the Super Bowl and all of its aspects. But wait, there's not other news that is more important than the Super Bowl, but there is other football news. For example, the Niners and Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Agency and CAA create a company called Elevate. The heads of CAA and the 49ers president, Al Guido, he serves as CEO and managing partner of Elevate. They'll have offices all over the country. The backgrounds are vast. They spent a lot of time in the NFL. Scott O'Neill is involved as well. But the new agency being formed to focus on premium seating, PSLs, corporate hospitality sales, and beyond that in subsequent years, and look to legends as an example. So things are happening off the field as well. How about that XFL? Vince McMahon says he's coming back. It launched in 2001. Wholesome, family-friendly. It's not going to emphasize sex and violence. It is Vince McMahon. The league starts during the winter following the Super Bowl. 8 yet-to-be-determined markets expected to be announced in the coming months. Cynical? Yeah, everybody's talking about it, but my take on it is that with all of the platforms and all of the new opportunities for streaming and other kinds of stuff, look for the XFL to at least make a dent. Who knows when it's going to get started? I'd certainly say it's going to get started. Maybe the over and under is 2 years, 2.5 years. But with Vince McMahon, please don't sell yourself short, because he's not going to either. Wonder if they're going to bring back that rush to the 50-yard line to recover the ball to start the game. I'm sure in this climate it might be difficult to do, but a lot of people are going to think about that. Well, let's look at basketball. The NBA wants a piece of sports betting. Adam Silver makes a comment that he wants 1% of all bets, not just on NBA games, but all of it, to help mobile devices. Kiosks will also be, in the latest legislation, eligible for these bets. And Vegas took in about $5 billion in legal wagers in 2017, 5% profit. About $400 billion illegally, estimates Silver. And even if $50 billion is bet on NBA games, the league takes in $500 million if this passes. We're a long way away, and the Supreme Court has to weigh in on this, as we've heard before. But yet, look for this to be more and more front and center, by the way, especially 2 weeks from now when the NBA All-Star Game goes to Los Angeles. Middle of the country, on the way to Los Angeles, Oklahoma City, the Thunder extends further than just the basketball court. Being a smaller market than most, the Thunder working to boost business development within their home state. The latest initiative, called Thunder Launchpad, seeks to help boost tech investment. The initiative, a partnership with Stitch Crew, a local firm, as well as others. The Thunder Launchpad's physical space is in OKC's Midtown neighborhood. It'll play host to events and programs, giving entrepreneurs the space and resources they need to impress potential investors. They're proud of what the Thunder has become as basically an incubator, and this becomes a big deal. Launchpad unique. It's a good way for the NBA to move forward in Oklahoma City. We've had the Fields and Futures process we've been involved in, as well as some shows showcasing it. This may be another step. And how about something else from the NBA? How about Kobe Bryant, the first NBA player to receive an Oscar nomination? Dear Basketball has been recognized in the animated short category by the Academy. 6-minute animated short recognized as a creative joint venture with Glenn Keane. Dear Basketball, the Players Tribune, in November of 2015 published it. Animated hits, Tangled, Tarzan, Beauty and the Beast by these folks, but John Williams helped Bryant edit the poem before it was published. He did a poem, and then that turned into something else. And if I were to place an Academy Award bet right now, my money would be on the Mamba. He certainly could play, and he certainly is incredibly creative. Couple loose ends before we leave you. How about NASCAR? They've been positive recently, more so than you think. International Speedway Corporation leads the way in agreement that integrates Coke's expansion beyond its current 50-year association, one of the most recognized sponsors in the sport, the official soft drink of NASCAR. They'll also sponsor 21 tracks, 12 owned by ISC, the Coke 600, the Coke 400, and otherwise. Speaking of ISC, their revenue for the quarter ending last August rose about 2.2%, despite declining race attendance. Food and beverage, non-traditional events, other things offset the sagging ticket sales, and the company set a 2017 revenue guidance at about $670 million. They made more. And for Coca-Cola and NASCAR, it's the real thing. Obviously, very important issue heading into their beginning of their season at the Daytona 500. We'll talk Daytona, we'll talk NBA, we'll talk Tiger, we'll talk golf, we'll talk everything else. But everybody understands, for this week, you got to talk football. You got to talk Super Bowl. We'd like to thank Kevin Warren. We'd like to thank Dan Martin and Tanner Simpkins for putting this together. We'd like to thank you guys for listening and watching. Enjoy the Super Bowl and all of the business impacts for it. And join us next when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.